Okay, so picture this. You are sitting in your annual review.
Oh, stressful right out of the gate.
Right. The fluorescent lights are humming. It's, that sterile office environment. And your boss slides a piece of paper across the desk.
The dreaded piece of paper.
Exactly. And there it is. It's a chart. And it's showing this undeniable dip in your quarterly metrics. And right next to it, there are a few bullet points about how your communication style in recent meetings has become, let's say, abrasive.
Ouch. Yeah, that stings.
It does. And the thing is, the data on that paper is mathematically, undeniably 100% accurate. It objectively proves your performance has dropped.
Right. It's just the facts.
But, and this is the crazy part, why does your brain immediately tell you that your boss is a liar?
Yes.
Why do you suddenly think like the data is rigged or the context is missing and you just absolutely need to go on the offensive?
It's such a universal reaction, too.
It really is. So, welcome to the College Profs Chalk Talk. I'm your host, and today we're exploring a phenomenon that affects every single one of us.
Truly everyone.
Yeah, whether you are in a corporate boardroom or a university classroom or, just trying to navigate a basic relationship in your own living room. We are looking at the anatomy of feedback.
A very tricky anatomy.
Very specifically, we're diving into this really baffling human paradox. Why is it that we can be handed the absolute objective truth about our behavior or our performance, and yet we completely and utterly fail to absorb it?
It's a profound contradiction in human behavior. I'm thrilled to be here to talk about it.
Right.
Because we operate under this foundational assumption in the professional world that truth just kind of has its own undeniable gravity.
Like the facts speak for themselves.
Exactly. We think that if you just tell someone the facts will do the heavy lifting for you.
Right.
But human psychology simply does not work that way. The human brain is not a purely rational hard drive just, sitting there waiting for a data upload.
Right. It's not just a computer.
No, it's a highly sensitive, deeply insecure organ that is constantly, always scanning for threats.
Which is wild when you think about it in an office setting. And to figure out the mechanics behind those threats, we are looking at an incredibly fascinating stack of suggested articles today.
Really good material this week.
On one hand, we have this comprehensive, rigorous psychological review by researchers Fulham, Kruger, and Cohen. And that details all the structural barriers to honest feedback.
The hard science.
The hard science. And on the other hand, we are pairing that academic research with a really fun, really practical management lesson.
Which is so helpful for visualizing it.
I think so, too. It uses the television show Ted Lasso, specifically the character arc of that incredibly talented but highly disruptive footballer, Jamie Tartt. It uses him as a case study for why perfectly accurate feedback fails to land.
It's a brilliant pairing of sources, honestly. The psychological review gives us the clinical vocabulary, the empirical data.
Right.
While the management case study gives us a living, breathing laboratory, we get to watch these academic theories play out in real-time interactions.
Which is crucial.
It is essential because feedback is fundamentally an interactive process. It doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Right. It takes two people. So our mission today is to uncover the hidden psychological tripwires in our everyday conversations. We want to discover how both giving and receiving feedback is a shared skill that goes far, far beyond simply, telling the truth.
Much further.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why does the truth so often go completely ignored in the workplace?
Well, to answer that, we have to start by dismantling a very common, very dangerous assumption.
Okay, what's that?
It's the idea that the content of the feedback is the most important part of the exchange.
Meaning the words themselves.
Right, the data. Most managers tend to believe that if the feedback is accurate, if the spreadsheet is correct, it will naturally be accepted.
Right. Like we said, truth speaks for itself.
But the suggested articles make it abundantly clear that the content is nearly the starting line. The gatekeeper to the entire process, the thing that actually determines whether the data even reaches the cognitive processing center of the brain, is the receptivity of the listener.
Receptivity. Okay, I feel like that word gets thrown around a lot in corporate wellness seminar.
Oh, absolutely. It's a buzzword.
Yeah. But what are we actually talking about from a psychological standpoint?
The research defines receptivity not just as a passive state of hearing. It's not just having your ears open.
Okay.
It's being actively open to considering the information provided and, crucially, acting on it if a change is warranted. It's a cognitive and an emotional posture.
Oh, posture. I like that.
But here's the problem. Feedback often fails right at the gate because it is immediately interpreted as a threat to the recipient's sense of self.
Wait, a threat? Like a physical threat. Because I know I felt my heart race during a bad performance review, but I'm not literally in physical danger.
Biologically speaking, your brain doesn't always distinguish between physical danger and psychological danger.
Wow, really?
Yeah. When feedback feels like an attack on the person, their character, their intelligence, their core values, rather than just an observation of a specific behavior, it triggers an intense psychological defense mechanism.
The fight or flight thing.
Exactly. The amygdala, which is the part of the brain responsible for processing fear and threat, essentially hijacks the prefrontal cortex.
And the prefrontal cortex is the logical part, right?
Right. It's the rational part of the brain that would normally, under calm circumstances, process the data on that piece of paper your boss slid across the desk.
So the data literally can't get in because the security system has locked down the building.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. It triggers shame, humiliation, and what the researchers call hostile attributions.
Hostile attributions, what is that exactly?
It's a fascinating mechanism. A hostile attribution is when your brain, in a desperate attempt to protect your ego, automatically assigns malicious intent to the person giving the feedback.
Oh, like they're out to get me.
Exactly. You don't just think the feedback is mathematically wrong.
Uh,
You think the person giving it is actively trying to destroy you.
wow.
The recipient goes into a protective crouch. They are no longer evaluating the truth of the statement. They are fighting for their psychological survival.
Man, that explains so much. Let's bring in the Ted Lasso case study here because I think it perfectly illustrates this protective crouch.
It really does.
So we have the character of Jamie Tartt. And if you haven't seen the show, he is exceptionally talented on the football pitch.
Generational talent.
Right. But he is completely self-absorbed, and his behavior is actively damaging the team. That is the objective truth of the situation.
Undeniable truth.
And he is told this exact same truth by 3 different people in 3 entirely different ways throughout the show. So let's look at the first messenger, Roy Kent.
Ah, Roy.
Yeah. Roy is the veteran leader of the team. His standing is unquestioned. And he delivers the feedback to Jamie with total absolute accuracy.
Flawless accuracy.
But he delivers it publicly, sharply, with 0 patience, and absolutely 0 visible investment in Jamie's success.
Right. Let's break down the mechanics of why Roy's approach is structurally doomed to fail. Roy operates under that fallacy we discussed earlier. He believes the truth speaks for itself.
He just yells the facts at him.
He tells Jamie he's being a selfish player. The diagnostic accuracy is perfect. But consider the environment. It is public, and it is laced with contempt.
And contempt is the absolute killer of receptivity, isn't it?
It is the ultimate trigger for a hostile attribution. When Roy delivers this perfectly accurate feedback with a tone of utter disgust, Jamie's brain immediately categorizes Roy as a predator, not a coach.
A predator? That's intense, but it makes sense with the amygdala response.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jamie gets defensive, he mocks Roy, and there is 0 durable change in his behavior.
Right. It's like getting a totally accurate medical diagnosis, but the doctor screams it at you in a crowded waiting room while calling you an idiot.
Exactly.
You're going to get defensive even if the lab results are 100% true. The accuracy of the lab results doesn't matter if the delivery makes you want to punch the doctor in the face.
That's a great analogy.
But, okay, I have to push back here for a second.
Please do.
Does this mean we just can't be blunt anymore? Are we supposed to just coddle everyone in the workplace because their amygdala might get a little sensitive? It feels like we are, I don't know, lowering the bar for professional resilience.
What's fascinating here is that it is not about coddling at all. It is entirely about efficacy.
Efficacy, okay.
If your goal as a manager or a colleague is simply to vent your frustration, then by all means, yell at them in the waiting room.
Right, if you just want to feel better.
But if your goal is to actually change their behavior, you have to work with the psychological realities of the human brain, not against them.
You have to hack the system.
Right. The Fulham paper digs deeply into this discrepancy. They point out that individuals who have a hypervigilance to threat, or individuals with low baseline self-esteem, or those with high rejection sensitivity, they are going to entirely discount negative feedback if it feels attacking.
So Jamie rejects Roy's accurate assessment, not because he intellectually thinks Roy is wrong about the football tactics.
No, Jamie knows football. He knows Roy is tactically correct. Jamie rejects the feedback because accepting Roy's feedback means accepting an identity he isn't ready to hold.
Oh, wow.
That means accepting that he is the villain of the team, the problem, the selfish child.
So he's protecting his ego. He basically has to reject the facts to save his self-concept.
He is protecting his very concept of who he is. The psychological review refers to this as self-concept discrepancy.
Self-concept discrepancy.
Yes. When feedback is radically inconsistent with the recipient's self-concept, in Jamie's case, his overconfidence in his own brilliance as a solo star, the easiest psychological maneuver is to simply dismiss the feedback as inaccurate or irrelevant.
Because holding both thoughts is too painful.
Exactly. The cognitive dissonance of holding two conflicting ideas like I am the best and my behavior is ruining the team is agonizing, so the brain throws out the feedback.
Just deletes it.
And the suggested articles show that people generally are incredibly skilled at discounting critical feedback if it threatens their self-worth. We will rationalize, we'll minimize, and we'll project blame anywhere else to avoid integrating that painful truth.
Okay, I get the ego threat with a guy like Roy Kent yelling at you. That makes perfect sense. Aggressive accuracy fails because it triggers an identity threat. The gates of receptivity just slam shut.
Exactly.
But let's look at another angle. What if the person giving the feedback is perfectly polite?
Okay, let's change the scenario.
Yeah, what if they don't yell, they don't trigger that immediate fight or flight response, but I just fundamentally don't trust them? Say, they're my boss, and I know they took credit for my project last year. Surely the polite delivery doesn't magically make the feedback land then. It seems like the relationship between the two people actually predates and completely dictates the success of the message.
That is a crucial pivot. Yes, the relationship is the infrastructure upon which the feedback travels. If the bridge is broken, the cargo doesn't get across, no matter how nicely it is packaged.
I love that. The bridge is broken.
Distrust is one of the most thoroughly explored barriers to receptivity in the literature we are reviewing today. If you do not trust the messenger, you will not trust the message.
Plain and simple.
And the researchers break this distrust down into several distinct flavors, which is highly useful for diagnosing why a conversation might be failing even when everyone is using their inside voices.
Okay, let's break those down. What are the flavors of distrust?
The first flavor is doubting the giver's credibility.
Credibility.
Okay, this is straightforward but incredibly pervasive. If the recipient perceives that the person giving the feedback lacks relevant expertise or information, they will immediately view them as an untrustworthy source.
Even if the person means well.
Yes. Imagine a software engineer getting highly technical coding feedback from a middle manager who hasn't written a single line of code in 15 years.
Oh, that happens all the time.
The engineer's internal monologue is just, you simply don't know what you are talking about. The feedback is dead on arrival, regardless of its subjective accuracy.
Which is an easy trap for managers to fall into when they manage cross-functional teams, right? They try to give tactical feedback on something they don't fully understand.
Precisely. They lose credibility.
Okay, what's the second flavor?
The second flavor is doubting the giver's concern for the recipient's well-being. This goes back to intent.
Intent, right.
If you are a student and you fundamentally believe your professor does not care about your academic future, if you think they just want to churn through papers and go home, you are statistically far less likely to accept and use their feedback.
Because you think, why should I listen to you? You don't actually want me to succeed, you just want to criticize me. Or worse, you're just doing this to check a box for HR.
You've hit on the third flavor right there.
Oh, I have.
Yes, suspecting ulterior motives. Are they financially incentivized to tell me this? Are they trying to manage me out of the company? Or are they biased?
And bias is a huge one. The suggested articles dive into some really complex dynamics here, don't they?
They do. The psychological review brings up some vital, highly nuanced findings regarding race and gender dynamics in this specific context.
Let's unpack that.
The researchers actually highlight a really interesting dynamic regarding cross-racial feedback. And we want to unpack their findings objectively here.
Right.
The research notes that when feedback givers, specifically white feedback givers in the context of the studies reviewed, experience anxiety about appearing biased or racist, that internal anxiety often manifests in their external communication style.
Meaning they get awkward.
Yes.
Like they might hesitate, they might over-explain, or they might soften the critique in an unnatural way because they're nervous.
Exactly. The meta-communication changes. The actual words might be fine, but the tone, the body language, the pacing, it all shifts.
Yeah.
And the recipients from minority groups are highly attuned to this meta-communication.
They pick up on the weird vibe.
Yes. When they pick up on that hesitation or awkwardness, they often interpret the feedback as disingenuous.
Yeah.
They sense the giver is managing their own image rather than providing genuine, helpful critique.
Wow.
As a result of that perceived inauthenticity, the trust is compromised, and the recipient becomes avoidant of the feedback.
Okay, let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around the mechanics of that. The giver might actually be trying very hard to be sensitive.
Right.
They might be trying to do the right thing, but because they are anxious about how they will be perceived, their behavior becomes unnatural. And then the listener picks up on the unnatural behavior, the meta-communication, and their brain registers it as a lack of authenticity, which ruins the trust required for the feedback to land. The message basically gets lost in the anxiety.
That is an excellent summary of the mechanism. The intention of the giver doesn't matter if the execution signals a lack of transparency.
That's wild.
The literature also discusses gender dynamics in a similar vein, noting studies where women sometimes receive less direct or more sugar-coated leadership advice than their male counterparts.
Because the givers are afraid of how it will be received.
Right. When bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious, filters the feedback, it prevents the recipient from getting an accurate picture of reality. It builds a totally different kind of barrier to truth.
Okay, so systemic biases and interpersonal distrust can completely ruin receptivity. But what about the fundamental beliefs of the person giving the feedback? Like, if my manager thinks I'm just fundamentally not that smart and I sense that, how does that change things?
You are referring to the giver's implicit beliefs about human potential.
Right.
The researchers discuss the impact of the fixed mindset factor. This is drawn from broader psychological concepts about how we view talent and intelligence.
Like the Carol Dweck stuff.
Exactly. If a manager or a teacher implicitly holds a fixed mindset, meaning they believe that people generally cannot change, that talent is an innate, static trait, they will invariably communicate that belief in how they deliver feedback.
How does that actually manifest, though? Do they just flat out say, "You're never going to get this"? Sometimes, but usually it's way more subtle than that. It shows up in their tone, in their lack of follow-up, or in the way they offer the critique as a final judgment rather than a stepping stone.
Oh, I've seen that.
They might say, "This report just isn't up to par," and leave it at that. The recipient, whether consciously or subconsciously, absorbs the subtext, which is, "You don't think I can do this."
Right.
And when a recipient senses that the giver believes they are fundamentally incapable of improving, it actively demotivates them.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't think you can get better, so I'm giving you this critique purely as a judgment, a label, rather than a map for improvement. And because you feel judged, you stop trying.
That is the tragic loop of the fixed mindset in a management setting. However, the research points to a very specific, actionable antidote to this.
Oh, good. We need an antidote.
It is a concept called wise feedback.
Wise feedback. What are the mechanics of that? Wise feedback is a specific intervention where the giver explicitly emphasizes two things simultaneously. First, they communicate incredibly high standards. They do not lower the bar.
Okay, so no sugarcoating.
No sugarcoating. Second, and crucially, they communicate their unshakable belief that the recipient is capable of meeting those standards.
So it's not just, "Here are all the things wrong with your work." It's framing it entirely differently. It's saying, "I am giving you these harsh edits because this journal has the highest academic standards in the field, and I am giving them to you because I know you have the capability to meet those standards if you put in the work."
Yes, that exact phrasing, that combination is cognitively very powerful. It completely neutralizes the hostile attribution we talked about earlier.
Because it proves they aren't out to get you.
Right. By stating your belief in their potential, you are proving your benevolent intent. You are saying, I am not attacking you. I am trying to elevate you to a standard I know you can reach. It builds trust instantly because it frames the relationship as an alliance against the problem rather than the manager against the employee.
I really love that framework. But, and here's where it gets really interesting. I want to take that a step further.
Okay.
Because this brings up something I've seen happen so often. What about our past experiences? Do we just project our old traumas onto our current bosses? Let's say you are the perfect manager. You use wise feedback. You are polite. You have no ulterior motive.
The ideal scenario.
Right. But the person you are managing has had 5 previous bosses who were absolute monsters.
Wow.
Bosses who used feedback as a weapon to demean and control them. I'm going to walk into my new nice manager's office already wearing armor, right?
You absolutely are.
Yeah.
When we look at the bigger picture of organizational psychology, the baggage is always in the room.
Yeah.
Always. The management case study of Jamie Tartt touches on this perfectly. The suggested articles mention the character of Jamie's father, who was shown to be highly abusive. His father modeled feedback purely as a tool of control and domination, rather than a tool of growth.
Yeah, he used criticism to systematically diminish his son.
Exactly.
Right, there's that famous scene where his dad berates him in the locker room. It's brutal to
It
watch.
is brutal and it's formative. If we connect this to the bigger picture, a recipient who has been deeply conditioned over years to view critique as a mechanism for humiliation, their brain will instinctively treat all feedback as a threat to their status.
No matter how nicely you say it.
No matter how gently it is delivered, you are never just giving feedback to the person sitting across from you. You are giving feedback to the ghosts of every person who has ever critiqued them in the past.
Man, that is sobering. So as a manager or a partner or a friend, you might be doing everything perfectly right. You might have read the research. You might be offering wise feedback with the purest intentions, but you are catching the ricochet of the recipient's historical trauma.
Exactly.
Which really drives home the point that the success of feedback is a shared, deeply complex psychological landscape. But let's assume for a second that we've cleared those hurdles.
Okay, let's assume.
Let's imagine a scenario where the trust is there, the ego isn't immediately threatened, there's no horrific past trauma hijacking the amygdala, and the relationship is solid. The message is finally allowed through the gate. Does the feedback magically work then?
Unfortunately, no.
Of course not.
That brings us to an entirely different category of barriers. Even if you are perfectly receptive, even if your amygdala is calm and you trust your manager implicitly, you still face the cognitive barrier.
The cognitive barrier.
Yes, actually understanding the truth in the feedback. The researchers call this the problem of discerning the truth.
Right, the decoding problem. Because sometimes the feedback doesn't fail because I'm defensive. It fails because the feedback is just terrible.
Yeah.
It's vague. It lacks examples. I've had managers tell me, you just need to be more proactive. And I sit there nodding, and then I go back to my desk and realize I have absolutely no idea what they actually want me to do differently tomorrow morning.
And that is a failure of transmission. Feedback is entirely useless if it is overly abstract, relies on jargon, or fails to provide a clear behavioral path forward.
Right.
The paper highlights that effective feedback must be detailed, usable, and personalized to the context of the employee's actual daily work. But instead, it's often delivered in these sweeping generalizations.
Just buzzwords.
Furthermore, the researchers point out how cultural differences profoundly impact this decoding process, adding a massive layer of complexity.
Oh, tell me more about that. How does culture change the decoding process?
The literature frequently references the difference between low-context cultures and high-context cultures.
I've heard those terms.
In a low-context culture like the United States or Germany, communication is very direct, explicit, and literal. The words mean exactly what they say.
You don't have to read between the lines.
Exactly. But in a high context, culture like Japan or many parts of the Middle East, communication relies heavily on implicit cues, nonverbal signals, and reading between the lines to maintain harmony and save face.
Okay, so let's put that in a practical scenario. What happens when those two cultures clash in a feedback setting?
Imagine an American manager operating from a low-context framework, reviewing a report written by a Japanese employee who operates from a high-context framework.
Okay.
The American manager might want the employee to completely rewrite a specific section because it's fundamentally flawed, but the American manager, trying to be polite, might say, this section could perhaps be a bit stronger.
And the American manager could be a bit stronger is clear feedback. It means, fix this, it's not good.
Yes. But the high-context employee decodes that message through their own cultural lens. In a high-context culture, a mild suggestion like could be a bit stronger might be interpreted as genuine, minor polish, a nice-to-have, not a mandate for a rewrite.
Oh, wow.
The employee thinks they did a good job overall and just needs to tweak a sentence or two. The manager thinks they gave a clear directive for a major overhaul.
And then what happens?
2 weeks later, the project fails, and the manager is furious that the employee ignored the feedback, while the employee is utterly confused because they thought they followed the mild suggestion perfectly.
That's a disaster.
The opportunity for catastrophic misunderstanding is immense when we don't account for how the receiver is decoding the words.
The receiver might think a gentle suggestion is actually a severe reprimand, or vice versa. It all depends on the invisible dictionary they are using to translate your words. That is fascinating.
And a massive barrier.
But surely that's not the only way we mess up the decoding process. It seems like a lot of the time, the biggest barrier to discerning the truth is something the givers intentionally do to themselves.
You are hitting on a massive structural flaw in organizational communication. The psychological review cites robust research showing that feedback givers systematically overestimate the negative consequences of giving critical feedback.
Meaning they are terrified of the reaction.
Yes. They are terrified of hurting the person's feelings, they're terrified of causing a conflict, or they're terrified the person will just quit. And because of that outsized fear, they intentionally inflate the positivity of their message.
They vape at it.
They actively muddy the waters. They soften the blow so much that the actual critical message, the data the person needs to improve, is completely lost in a sea of padding.
Oh, I know exactly where this is going. This is the classic, infamous corporate move. The feedback sandwich.
Oh, the sandwich, yes.
Positive, negative, positive. You start with a compliment, you shove the bad news in the middle, and you end on a high note.
The formula.
Yeah, like, I love your energy in the morning meetings, your financial projections are completely inaccurate and currently costing the company thousands of dollars, but hey, great shirt today.
Exactly.
I have to ask you to absolutely tear this approach apart based on the research, because I know for a fact that people still teach the feedback sandwich as a best practice in management seminars today.
I would be more than happy to tear it apart. The feedback sandwich is deeply problematic, and the suggested articles dismantle it quite effectively from a cognitive perspective.
Good. Let's hear it.
This raises an important question about how our well-intentioned attempts to soften the blow actually do far more harm than good. When you sandwich critical information between positive statements, you create two distinct, massive barriers simultaneously. First, you create a massive barrier to receptivity.
Wait, why? Wouldn't the praise make them more receptive, like fluffing their ego a bit?
You would think so, but humans are highly attuned to pattern recognition. The recipient isn't foolish. They have received a feedback sandwich before.
True, we all have.
They know that the initial praise is just a vehicle, a Trojan horse, for the criticism. So instead of feeling good about the praise, they feel manipulated. It makes the giver look insincere.
It totally does.
The recipient's internal monologue is, "Don't patronize me, just tell me what I did wrong." The moment they feel manipulated, trust evaporates and receptivity drops to zero.
It feels like a trick. And nobody likes being tricked by their boss.
It is a trick. It is manipulative insincerity. And second, even if they don't feel manipulated, the sandwich creates a massive barrier to actually discerning the truth.
How so?
This is a cognitive interference problem. The crucial negative information, the specific behavior the person actually needs to change to succeed, gets obscured by the irrelevant praise. The human brain tends to remember the first and last things it hears, the primacy and recency effects.
So they remember the morning energy and the great shirt, but they totally forget the financial ruin they're causing.
Precisely. The recipient walks away confused. They think, well, they said my reports needed some work, but they spent 5 minutes talking about how much they love my energy, so overall I must be doing great. The truth is literally lost in the padding. You have failed to deliver the message because you were too scared of the delivery.
Okay, I hear you. The sandwich is dead.
Let's hope so.
But I have to push back here. If blunt, aggressive accuracy like Roy Kent's doesn't work because it triggers an ego threat, and the manipulative soft feedback sandwich doesn't work because it ruins trust and muddies the truth, what on earth is the actual solution?
It's a tightrope walk.
How do we thread this impossible needle? Are we just trapped between being a jerk and being a liar?
It feels like a paradox. But the psychological review introduces a highly effective framework to solve it. It's a concept called benevolent honesty.
Benevolent honesty.
Right.
Okay.
It is the critical sweet spot, and it requires a high degree of emotional intelligence from the giver. It sits squarely between brutal honesty, which is Roy Kent, accurate but destructive, and what is often called ruinous empathy, or manipulative insincerity, which is the feedback sandwich.
So what does benevolent honesty actually look like in practice?
Benevolent honesty means delivering the unvarnished truth clearly and directly, without any manipulative padding, but doing so in a way that actively, explicitly promotes the well-being and growth of the recipient.
So you care and you're truthful.
Right. It requires you to be candid and caring simultaneously. You do not trade one value for the other.
Wait, let me challenge that. In practice, how is benevolent honesty any different from the feedback sandwich? If I'm being candid about their failures but also trying to show care, doesn't that just turn into the same muddy, confusing mess? Aren't I just giving them a sandwich with different bread?
That is an excellent pushback, and it highlights a very common misunderstanding. The difference is sequential versus simultaneous.
What do you mean?
The feedback sandwich is sequential. I give you fake care, then I give you the truth, then I give you more fake care. They are separate, disconnected thoughts used to distract you.
Okay.
Benevolent honesty is simultaneous. The care is not a distraction from the truth. The care is the reason for the truth.
Oh. Can you give me an example of what that sounds like?
Instead of the sandwich, a manager using benevolent honesty might say, I want to talk about your financial projections. They are currently inaccurate, and we need to fix the formula you're using. I am bringing this to you directly because I value your contribution to this team. I want you to succeed here long term, and I know you have the analytical skills to get this right once we clear up the process.
Ah, I see. You don't hide the bad news, you put it front and center.
Exactly.
But you frame the delivery of the bad news as an active investment in their career. I'm telling you this because I care about your success. Candor and care working together.
Exactly. It removes the manipulation while mitigating the ego threat.
Yeah.
But the reason it's so hard for us to do this, why we default to the sandwich or why we just avoid the conversation altogether, is often because we don't actually know what job our feedback is supposed to be doing in the first place.
We don't know the job of the feedback.
Right. We just feel anxious, we know something is wrong, and we start talking.
Yes, we just start talking without a plan. And the management case study breaks this dynamic down brilliantly. They highlight that there are 3 completely distinct jobs that feedback can do, and we mix them up all the time. Let's walk through these because this was a huge light bulb moment for me.
The 3 jobs are evaluation, coaching, and appreciation.
Evaluation, coaching, and appreciation.
These are not interchangeable, and confusing them or offering one when the recipient desperately needs another is a primary reason well-intentioned feedback collapses into frustration.
Okay, let's start with evaluation.
Evaluation tells you where you stand. It is the grade on the test, the ranking against your peers, the baseline reality of your performance.
It's the harsh truth.
It is objective, and it is usually retrospective. It answers the question, am I meeting expectations?
When coaching.
Coaching tells you how to get somewhere else. It is future-oriented, developmental, and instructional. It is the advice on how to improve your swing, how to communicate better in meetings, how to manage your time. It answers the question, how can I get better?
And finally, appreciation.
Appreciation tells you that your contribution mattered. It is about motivation, recognition, and seeing the person as a human being. It answers the question, do you see the effort I am putting in?
And the problem is we often give one when the person needs another.
Constantly.
If I am terrified that I am about to be fired, I am desperate for evaluation, I need to know where I stand, and my boss calls me in and just gives me coaching on how to use a new software program, I'm going to be paralyzed with anxiety. I can't absorb the coaching because I don't know my baseline.
Or conversely, if you have worked 80 hours a week for a month to launch a project, and you desperately need appreciation to keep your morale up, but your boss only gives you evaluation, a sterile list of the metrics you hit, you will feel deeply undervalued and burn out.
Let's apply this framework back to the Ted Lasso case study because I think it exposes a major flaw in a very popular style of modern leadership. Let's analyze the character of Ted himself.
Yes, let's look at Ted.
Now, Ted is the ultimate nice guy. He is universally beloved. He is deeply private with his feedback. He is incredibly warm. He is empathetic. And he is endlessly patient with Jamie's terrible behavior. Ted is very, very heavy on appreciation. And he does a lot of coaching. He's always giving Jamie little folksy life lessons and tips.
He is. But the analysis of the case study points out a massive structural flaw in Ted's early interactions with Jamie. Ted's conversations entirely lack consequence, and more importantly, they completely lack evaluation.
He never tells him he's failing.
Right. Ted is providing immense warmth, but he is not providing a clear baseline of where Jamie actually stands in relation to the team's required standards.
Okay, so what does this all mean? I have to play devil's advocate here. Isn't Ted the ideal modern manager? We are told constantly in business books to lead with empathy, to be a servant leader, to prioritize psychological safety. Are you saying that being the nice, endlessly patient manager, the Ted, is actually a failure of leadership in this context?
In the absence of evaluation and consequence, yes, it is absolutely a failure of leadership.
Wow, that's controversial.
This is a very difficult truth for highly empathetic managers to accept. Warmth without consequence is just as ineffective as Roy's accuracy without warmth. The case study puts it perfectly, and this is a quote worth remembering. Feedback that is comfortable to receive and easy to ignore is not really feedback at all. It is closer to hope.
Closer to hope. That is a gut punch. Ted isn't managing Jamie. He's just hoping Jamie will magically decide to change because Ted is being such a nice guy.
Exactly. But Jamie has no incentive to change. He can absorb all of Ted's warmth and appreciation. He can listen to all the folksy coaching without changing a single selfish behavior because nothing in his world fundamentally changes if he ignores the coaching.
He still plays every game.
He still gets to start every game. He still gets to be the star player.
He suffers no loss. Coaching has no anchor if the recipient doesn't first receive clear evaluation.
A manager who wants their coaching to work must first make the difficult choice to ensure the employee understands, unambiguously, what the evaluation is.
They have to do the hard part first.
Yes. If you tell an employee, here is a great framework for how you can improve your presentation skills, which is coaching, but you haven't had the hard conversation to tell them your current presentations are failing to win us clients and it is impacting your quarterly review, which is evaluation, they have no imperative to accept the coaching. They think you're just offering a helpful, optional tip for their personal development.
It's like giving someone a beautifully detailed map, but refusing to tell them that the house they are currently sitting in is on fire. Hey, here's a great efficient route to the grocery store.
Right.
They don't need that right now. They need the harsh evaluation. You are in danger. The house is burning. Without the evaluation, the map is useless.
Exactly.
Okay, so if Roy has accuracy without warmth, which triggers defense, and Ted has warmth without consequence, which just breeds complacency, what actually forces a change in behavior? How do we break the stalemate? That brings us to the climax of this entire feedback framework, the missing variable, consequence.
Let's look at the third strategy presented in the Ted Lasso case study. We had Roy's bluntness, and we had Ted's patience. The third entity involved in managing Jamie's behavior is the institution itself, the football club's management structure.
The people running the team.
Right. And for a very long time, the club's strategy is basically prolonged silence. It is institutional indifference dressed up as tolerance. They let Jamie act out, bully his teammates, and skip practice because he is scoring goals.
Which is a dynamic that happens in literally every company in the world. The top salesperson or the brilliant coder gets away with incredibly toxic behavior because they hit their quota or they ship the product.
Exactly.
The institution tolerates the poison because of the profit.
Precisely. The institution avoids the conflict. But eventually, the club's silence is broken. There is a sudden formal decision regarding Jamie's actual roster spot. He's benched and eventually moved.
Tolerance ends.
It ends abruptly. And this institutional intervention succeeds in triggering a crisis for Jamie, where the individual conversations with Roy and Ted failed. But we have to understand why it succeeds.
Why?
It does not succeed because the club provided new, groundbreaking information.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie already knew he was being selfish. It succeeds because it is the first time the message carries actual, undeniable weight.
The cost of ignoring the feedback finally became real. The theoretical became tangible.
Yes. Real, durable change in behavior usually requires evaluation and coaching to happen in the same room. But crucially, it must be backed by a clear consequence, so the message isn't viewed as a mere opinion or a polite suggestion.
Right.
If there is no consequence, the feedback is theoretical. It is just words in the air. Consequence is the gravity that pulls the feedback down into reality.
But I want to make sure we don't take the wrong lesson from this. This shouldn't just be about managers dropping the hammer and ruling by fear. It can't just be do what I say or you're fired.
No, not at all.
There's a vital nuance here about how the receiver handles that consequence, right? Because the suggested articles are very clear that feedback is a two-way street. It is a shared responsibility. The burden isn't solely on the manager to say it better, use benevolent honesty, and design the perfect consequence. The recipient has a massive job to do in this equation, too.
This is perhaps one of the most empowering and often overlooked takeaways from the psychological review. Feedback competence runs in both directions.
That's right.
The researchers emphasize that the recipient must possess the self-regulatory skills to inhibit their own defensive emotional reactions. If a receiver have never been taught how to manage their amygdala response, if they have never learned to separate the objective message from the potentially flawed tone of the messenger, they will continuously discard true, valuable information for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with its truth.
Let me try out an analogy here to see if I'm fully grasping the shared responsibility aspect.
Go for it.
It's like a game of catch. I, as the manager, can be the best pitcher in the world. I can read all the research, I can throw the ball perfectly, using benevolent honesty, offering a crystal clear evaluation, blending in the perfect amount of coaching, and establishing fair consequences.
A perfect pitch.
But if you, as the receiver, are standing there holding a baseball bat instead of a catcher's mitt, treating every single pitch as an attack that needs to be aggressively swatted away, the conversation still shatters. The window gets broken. I can't force you to catch the ball if you insist on swinging a bat.
That is a highly accurate analogy. You cannot outcommunicate a receiver who is fiercely determined to be defensive. The best delivery in the world cannot penetrate a closed system.
Right.
However, the research does offer a very powerful practical tool for both parties to change that dynamic. It introduces a concept known as conversational receptiveness.
I love this concept. Let's dig into the mechanics of it. What is conversational receptiveness and how do we actually do it?
Conversational receptiveness is defined as the deliberate use of language to communicate your willingness to thoughtfully engage with opposing views or critical feedback. The key word there is deliberate.
Deliberate, meaning you have to try.
Right. It's not just being open-minded internally. It is actively verbally signaling to the other person that you are open-minded.
How do you signal that?
It's using specific phrases like, I hear you saying, or let me make sure I understand your point, are you saying?
Yeah.
Or that is a perspective I hadn't fully considered. Tell me more about that.
It sounds like active listening, but with a specific focus on lowering the temperature in the room.
It does far more than just lower the temperature. Let's go back to your baseball bat analogy.
Okay.
If I am the pitcher and I see you holding a bat, my nervous system gets anxious. I might throw the ball too hard, or I might refuse to throw it at all. Conversational receptiveness is the equivalent of the receiver slowly lowering the bat and holding up the mitt so the pitcher can see your hands. It signals safety to the other person's nervous system.
Oh, that is fascinating. It regulates the giver.
Exactly. The incredible finding from the empirical research is that receptiveness is deeply contagious.
Contagious.
The data shows that when one partner in a conflict or a feedback conversation actively uses the language of conversational receptiveness, it actually engenders receptiveness in the other person.
So it calms them down too.
If the receiver puts down the bat and picks up the mitt, the pitcher subconsciously relaxes, their anxiety drops, and they throw a better, more careful, more honest pitch. Both parties are actively shaping the interaction in real time.
So as the recipient of feedback, even if your boss is doing a terrible job delivering it, even if they are pulling a full Roy Kent, letting their biases show and just yelling the facts at you in a crowded room, you are not powerless.
You are never powerless.
You have the power to regulate your own emotions. Use the deliberate language of conversational receptiveness to calm them down and extract the objective truth from their messy delivery. You can literally save the conversation yourself.
You can. You share the responsibility for removing the barriers. You can choose to look past the poor delivery, acknowledge the ego threat happening in your own brain, and ask yourself, is there truth hidden in this terrible delivery that I need to discern for my own professional growth? You take control of the narrative.
That is an incredibly empowering place to land. Okay, let's pull all of these threads together. We've taken a deep, rigorous journey through the hidden anatomy of feedback today.
We really have covered a lot of ground.
We've learned that simply having the facts, having absolute accuracy is necessary, but it is absolutely not sufficient to create behavioral change. Feedback falls apart when it triggers our amygdala and threatens our core identity and ego.
Right, the hostile attribution.
And it fails when there's a trust deficit, whether we are doubting someone's credibility, questioning their motives, or navigating complex, unspoken biases. It fails when we obscure the truth by using manipulative, fear-based tactics like the feedback sandwich.
And it fails when we confuse our fundamental purposes,
Yeah.
when we offer coaching without the clear anchor of evaluation, or when we offer warmth and appreciation without the necessary structural boundary of consequence.
Exactly. The ultimate takeaway from our suggested articles today is that effective feedback requires a delicate, highly intentional balance. It requires the giver to practice benevolent honesty, unvarnished candor paired with genuine, explicit care for the recipient's success.
Yes.
And it requires the receiver to practice emotional regulation and conversational receptiveness, putting down the bat and picking up the mitt. It is a shared, complex dance.
It is a mutual commitment to prioritizing growth and truth over temporary comfort.
Well said. We want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over as you go about your week. The next time you are sitting in a room and someone gives you feedback that makes your blood boil, your face flush, and your defenses immediately spike, take a breath.
Just breathe.
Recognize what is happening in your brain. Put down the baseball bat and ask yourself a very hard, very uncomfortable question. Are you rejecting their words because they are genuinely false? Or are you rejecting them because they are painfully, undeniably true, and accepting them would force you to rewrite the comfortable story you've been telling about yourself?
A great question to ask.
Thank you for joining us for this session of the College Profs Chalk Talk. Keep questioning your assumptions, keep learning, and we highly encourage you to review the suggested articles for yourself. Until next time.